All right, folks. Good morning. Running a little late today, but we are on the line, on air, and good to meet with you. Sunday school, our teacher again, Curtis Shore is actually our Sunday school teacher. He's gone. He's down Wetumpka, and so he better watch out. That guy can end up being the pastor down there, and so uh, we're glad that you're here. And get your Bibles, get your drink of choice, and let's see what God has to say to us today. Now, today's Sunday school lesson is found in the book of Hosea, again, chapter 10. Yes, Hosea 10. I had to verify. We're going to be um, looking at. Now, remember, in the book of Hosea, it deals with um, God reaching out to the people, trying to help them. Now, what we're going to read today, you could say, is the okay. In school, um, we're learning about the different systems, organ systems. The kids are trying to learn respiratory and digestion and all that. And one of them is the central nervous system, which is your uh, brain and your spinal cord, and then the peripheral nervous system, which is all the other nerves. And I asked them, how many of you guys have ever heard someone tell you you're getting on their last nerve? And all those kids' hands goes up. I said, "What's that mean?" And they were trying to figure out what that meant. It meant, you're you're cruising for a bruise. There's all kind of sayings you could say. You're walking on a thin line there, man. But um, what it means is you got to the end. You're right at the end. No more chances. No more chances. What we're reading today is God telling the people not that this is the last chance. He's telling them the chances are now gone. Okay. And now this is it. And so, in order for there to be any type of God um, encouraging us to change with the or else, we need to know that the or else is true. Okay. It doesn't do any good to threaten. How many parents here, if you're watching, how many times do you threaten your kids, but you never go through with it? The kids know that, and the kids know you're it's just all hot air. It's bluster. And no, there needs to be a real uh, portion there. And this is the real portion that God's talking about. Let's pray. Father, bless us now in the scriptures, the reading, Sunday school, the other churches meeting. But Father, give us understanding, those that are here, those that are watching online. Help us to see, Father, what your word has for us today. In Christ's name, amen. Okay. It says, now, God's talking to them, not giving them one more chance. He's talking to them now. You've had your chance. Now this is it. Okay. It says the residents of Samaria will have anxiety over the calf. Now you got to remember, there's a lot of God's Hosea saying this for God to the people, and there's a lot of imagery for them in their time. Okay, we want to look at the context of it. What's the meaning? Okay, behind it. He says, the residents of Samaria will have anxiety over the calf of Bethaven. Indeed, its idolatrous priests rejoiced over it. The people will mourn over it, over its glory. It will certainly depart from them. The calf itself will be taken to Assyria as an offering to the great king. Ephraim will experience shame. Israel will be ashamed of its counsel. Samaria's king will disappear like foam on the surface of the waters. The high places of Avon, the sin of Israel, will be destroyed. Thorns and thistles will grow over their altars. They will say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. Israel, you have sinned since the days of Gibeah. They have taken their stand there. Will not war against the unjust overtake them in Gibeah? I will discipline them at my discretion. Nations will be gathered against them to put them in bondage for their two crimes. Okay, so uh, the two crimes that he's talking about is, well, you got to look at verse 1, which actually isn't part of our lesson, but let's look at it. It says, Israel is a lush vine, it yields fruit for itself. The more his fruit increased, the more he increased the altars. The better his land produced, the better they made the sacred pillars. When he says the two sins they're talking about, he's talking about God is saying, you did not properly use what I gave you, and then you're off in verse 5 that we just read, you're worshiping other gods. See, the two sins that he's talking about are uh, I have clearly shown myself in your life. I've taken care of you, yet you haven't responded to that. We could say, folks, as we look at this now in application to our lives, does God take care of us? Does he? Does he provide for us? Does he give us finances? Does he give us health? Does he give us opportunities? Does he give us, the jobs that we have? Does he do that? The answer we would have to say is yes, he does. Do we give him back his proper acknowledgement from that? He's saying, Israel, you're a lush vine. You grew fruit, but the more fruit you got, you used that fruit for yourself. See? And God says, that's a sin. I did not give that to you for you solely to use that and say, it's mine, mine, mine. He says, no. The more you got, the more you used for yourself. Think about that. The more you got, the more you use for yourself. So why does God give us what he gives us? Well, number one, he loves us. But number two, that we might acknowledge him through it. And remember, it's not an amount acknowledgement. It's not, you give more because or whatever. And if a person makes more, they ought to give more, is what he's saying. You made more, you gave to yourself. But even if a person just makes a little bit, they acknowledge the Lord, and that little bit, God accepts that. He accepts what is given in thankfulness to him, acknowledgement of him. Because if we're honest, we have to acknowledge God did that. God does that in our lives. So that's the first sin he's talking about. So we have to look at our lives and say, is there a part of our lives that we leave out and we think it's me, it's about me, and it's for me, when actually God's in every part of our lives, every part. When you woke up this morning, did you wake up praying? Did you wake up thinking? Boy, I got up and first thing I did, I sat down and started praying. I started praying for the service, praying for the needs, getting ready, and ready to get out the door. Boy, we was ready to get out the door this morning, and then oh man, that trailer's still hooked on the truck. So I had to run out there and hook the trailer and drag it around. Had to drive around the block so I could get it through the yard. Then I had to unhook it. I got to pull that trailer back and and all that stuff, and that's why we was a little late today getting online. But and all that, but that's all part of getting ready. And I should have thought about that last night, but I just didn't. It's completely slipped my mind. And then we took off and left the songbooks. Had to turn around and go back for those too. And all of that. So there's things like that. But you see, God's not going to punish you because you did that, and you're late, because that's the acknowledgement is we're still trying to get to church. That's God's acknowledgement right there. That's his acknowledgement. When you know, when you're ready, when you're prepared, God accepts that. Now, does He accept when we halfway prepare? Does God accept that? You know, I am part of an organization, and they asked me to be their keynote speaker way last spring. So I got ready. Actually, took a lot of effort for me to get ready and do what I did. I mean, way more than just myself. I had to bring people in, and it took a lot of logistics just for me to get there to do what they asked me to do. And I got there, and they had told me when they asked me, Mr. Pratt, you're also going to receive an honorarium. Okay, that means they're going to pay you for coming, which you should. You should pay the people that you invite to come and help you. You should take care of them. If somebody does something for you, goes out of their way to help you, you ought to acknowledge that. Okay, uh, and it's whatever, because they're doing that. So they said we'll give you an honorarium. Okay, so I went over there. Boy, we had a good time. I did my best, and when I talked to the people, made some of them cry, because I was talking, because I always give my best when I talk. Now here's the thing: they didn't have no honorarium for me. No big deal, guys. That's not a big deal. That's not the point. But they said they would get it to me. So 1 month went by, then another month went by, then another month went by, and then they'd say, okay, we're gonna, what's your address? And I sent it, and they said, okay, and then another month went by, and then so here we are, a whole half a year, even longer later, and we get to another conference with them, and I'm there, and I come in, and this lady there sees me, and this is what she says. Goes, oh, she says, Warren, it's good to see you. Oh, I need to pay you, don't I? And so she went over there and wrote out a check and then handed it to me, and so I got the amount. You know what I okay, I got the remember, this is not an amount story, which by the way, it wasn't very much. Okay. But I got an amount. But the thing is, they did it as an afterthought. They did it as an afterthought. Yes, they did what they said they were going to do over half a year later, and didn't do it until they ran into me face to face at this other conference. Oh, that and I remember thinking, you wouldn't have did that to all them big names you guys invite to come speak at your conferences. You wouldn't have, I know you didn't do this to them, and I'm pretty sure you didn't give them this amount, because these are guys flying in from the coast to speak, and you asked me to be the keynote speaker, and I came, and I made people cry because of the way I can talk, and I encouraged you and shared stories with you and all of that. Which, by the way, this was not a church thing. This was another organization. My point is, yes, they did what they said they were going to do, but they did it as an afterthought, which almost makes me want to just step out from the organization. But I'm not there for that. It's not about me. It's about the work we do. Now, here's my point. Does God have to receive that type of acknowledgement from you? Do you acknowledge God as an afterthought and say, here, Lord? What do you think God is going to feel when he receives afterthought acknowledgments? See, that's what he's telling them in this first part. I'm the one that gave you all of that. And it says, the more I gave you, the more you simply did for yourself. Mine, mine, mine. That's a sin, folks. He's telling them, and now he's saying, you've stepped across the line. So that's a good thing. Now, let me show you this. LaWanda. When I got to church, I saw a little package on my desk. It says, to Brother Junior, gift. And I never know what I'm going to get from this particular person. I've gotten all kind of things, and every one of them is good because it's thought out, you know. And so it's this one. Look at what I received. A Bigfoot bandana. I don't know where sister gets these things, but man, I've got a lot of these, and these are neat because everyone knows, man, I'm really into Bigfoot, and I got a Bigfoot bandana. Thank you, sister, for that. But you see, that was sitting on my chair even before I got here. It was, "Oh, yeah, I bought this for you last year, but here." No, it's not. That's 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 what sometimes we give God. Oh, yeah. That's not what God wants to receive, and that's not what his holiness allows him to receive. He just but sometimes we give him that. We give him afterthought, and that's what happened. That's my little story of that, and that's what he's telling them, and he kept telling, "Don't do that. Don't do that. First fruits, first fruits, first fruits. God, 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 and then everything else." See? And uh we sat around the fire at our house last night. Maybe some of y'all did because, with the kids all trick or treating, whether you do that or not, that's not my point. My point is they do in our town, and last night was our night. And some towns it's going to be tomorrow night, but ours was last night. So I always like to build a fire outside our house. We got one of them metal fire pits, so I drug it out and built the fire. And I was going to watch a movie out there too, but we never got it around. But I listened to music, and so I sat there, and the kids come down to where I'm at. "Hey, Mr. Pratt," and all my students were coming by, and I saw a whole bunch of them, and was giving them all that. But when it was all winding down, and it was winding down, and the kids weren't coming so much because it's dark. It's getting around 8:39, and there's still a few straggle in. Those are a few. It was just us sitting around the fire. All my kids were there. My grandkids were there, and another family was there, and we're all sitting there. They had cooked hot dogs, and I ate one, and we're just talking. We're laughing, and the was drinking pop, and had all this. We're just sitting there laughing, and I remember thinking, does life get much better than this? Does it? Does life really get better? Is life better by having a bigger house, more cars, more money, more things? Or is life simply the fact you're sitting around the fire with your family and your grandkids and you're talking and you're laughing? Not on our phones, not on our minds somewhere else, but we're invested in each other. We're talking. We're asking questions. We're making fun of each other. And I remember sitting there thinking, and then we talked about the Lord. Boy, we had a really good Lord part in there. Does life get better than this? And my question to you that's watching this even, how is life at its best for you when life has God in it and its center part? Because God is acknowledgement that God has brought all our kids together. Because there's a lot of kids out last night walking around in groups. You just know they're going to get into trouble, but you know all my kids and grandkids are all sitting around the fire. We're sitting around there. We're talking. We're visiting. We're laughing, and all of that. That's an acknowledgement of God, and God is saying, "I accept that, folks. I accept what you do." And maybe that's not your life. Maybe that's not the way it is. But folks, if you begin to put God first in your life and not yourself, it'll change. It will change. That's what he's telling them. That's the first sin. But the second sin he said was he says two crimes actually in the Holman Christian. It says there in verse 10, two crimes. He said the second one was you went off after other idols and gods. The first one says, yes, you acknowledge me, but it's an afterthought. The second one is you're not acknowledging me because I'm not your God. You're chasing these other gods. And isn't it crazy that the nation of Israel in the Old Testament ran after gods as much as they did? And I say it's crazy because God was so evident in their life because he had done the miracles. He had, through Moses, led them into, freedom. They were in bondage. They knew this. They knew this. They God was just everything about. He was intertwined in their whole historical past, and he's there now. Yet they consistently forgot him and ran after other false gods. And we might have the tendency to say, if I lived back there and I saw the things I saw that they saw, I wouldn't have been like that. I would believe just like, I'm supposed to because, man, God would be proven to me. And the short answer to that is no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. He's not talking about just the Israelite people. He's talking about people. People left to their own devices will not seek God. They will not. People left to their own devices will not find God. God has to reveal himself to you and reach out to form a relationship. He has to. So, uh, to to think we'd be different is not true because I know here in Oklahoma, especially, and its other states too, because I do travel. Man, you see churches everywhere. They're everywhere. We were just down there to Mini Springs Church down south of Holdenville, and I preached at Holdenville, and I took Ken with me. It's my traveling partner, and I always give you rides, don't I, Ken? And so you know what Ken did for me? He bought me a pop. And so when I got in the car, he had a pop waiting for me. But it wasn't a pop, it was a pop. It was a big old pop. All right. So I was driving down the road like this. And and he bought that pop for me because I gave him a ride. And so we travel a lot. We do. But I was down there at that church, and when I was talking to him, I said, and a lot of times they'll say, "What other churches do we have here?" And they started to say these churches, and they were saying them. I said, and I was thinking, I preached there before. I preached there before. I preached there before, and I was saying I preached at those all these churches they're naming. Somewhere in my past, I preached there, and I can't remember where a lot of them are because, man, down there in Creek Country, them churches are thick. They're thick down there, yeah, and the people there, the tribes here, the it doesn't matter if you're not Indian in Oklahoma. God has established Himself. He has. He has established himself in this state, in the states. He's in every state in this nation. Yet our people still reject him. It's not a matter of God did not reach out. He has reached out and continues to. It's that we ignore and chase after other gods. Now, let's kind of look at it this way because remember, we have to find application. He's talking about the calf of Bethaven. That's their god. Okay, we don't have the calf of Bethaven, and we don't have all the things that it's talking about, the high places of Avon and the days of Gibeon. See, we don't have that. What do we have? Okay, what do we have? My kids are good ball players. My sons, and and I saw a flyer they were given about you know they could play football for this all-star team, but really to me it looks like I remember a few years ago, uh, and I guess they still have it. They hand out these flyers. Maybe you've seen them about your child could be a talent scout and can get in commercials. They have these things in Tulsa, and once a week you have to go to Tulsa and go to these classes, and you pay, and they pay you to, uh, you pay them, and your kids go through training, and then they're supposed to have a final end of everything talent show, and there's supposed to be talent scouts there, and And what it is, it's just a scam. It's a money scam. Your kid's not going to get in a commercial. Your kid's not going to win the thing. It's a scam. But I've known parents that were scammed and they started taking their kids over there. And it actually it's pretty expensive. It gets up into the thousands. And it's a hope that their kids will get to that when and the reality is no, it's not going to happen. And then they'll even have a big old talent show thing out in California. And you know what? Kids will go out there thinking that they're going to somehow get discovered, and it's never going to happen, folks. It's never going to happen. And these parents pay money, buy airfare, they go out there. You got to get your own hotels. You see, it's just it's a scam. The only ones profiting from that are the people putting it on. Well, they got a flyer that was talking about that, and to me, it looks like the same thing. You pay, and you can go practice, and maybe you'll get on this all-star team. But the thing is, it's on Sundays. Idol. That's an idol. That's an idol that my kids. Yes, we're supposed to love our kids and do things for our kids. See, but for them to miss church, because Sunday is church day, and do other things is an idol. It is an idol. And if you're doing that, you're chasing other idols. You and your kids should be in church on Sunday. Period. Period. It's an idol. And people will take their kids and, oh, because I love my kids and all this stuff without realizing one day your kids are going to have to make decisions. They're going to have to know the Lord. And God is telling them, I told you, I told you, I told you. So that's an idol. Boy, those Sunday ball games is an idol. Other idols we can do, is recreation, all these other things. Anything that comes between you and going to church, serving the Lord, folks, it's going to have to be lumped in the category of idolatry. It is. Now, we might think of it like that. When we think of idolatry, we think of, oh, all these things and maybe a statue and that it's not the physical part. It's the mental attitude that is idolatry. See, because remember, uh, Paul was asked one time, "Is it okay to eat the food that was offered to gods in these temples? Is it okay to eat the food that was offered to idols in these other temples? Because it's good food." What would you say? Think, someone asked you that. Say there's another church or something, whatever, and they got food, and they say, "Hey, come eat this food, or do you want some of this food?" And it was used over there, but it's good food. You know what Paul said? You know what Jesus said when was confronted with that? He said, "It's not what goes into you that corrupts you; it's what comes out of you." What he was saying is, the food is just food. The food's fine; it's just food. It's what comes out of you that is what is wrong and bad. So let me ask ourselves the question then: where are there idols in our lives? And the idol might just be laziness. You kneel at the altar of lazy. And I know a lot of lazy people, handout people, got their hand out, know how to play the system, expect the tribe and the government to take care of them. That's lazy, you know. And there is a God of lazy. There's a God of we know alcoholism, of drug abuse. I mean, those are the overt ones. Yes, they're outwards. The covert ones are the other ones, you and they're out there. There's a idol uh, of ignoring. We'd rather. See what they said? Look what they said right there. Verse 8. Cover us to the mountains and to the hills fall on us. In other words, just cover me so I don't have to mess with it. I can ignore it. That's idolatry, folks, because that all is kneeling at the altar of self. We're all going to have to bow our knees to somebody. We're bowing our knees to somebody right now. Make sure that somebody is God, Jehovah God, who sent his son Jesus to die on the cross. So these are hard verses because remember, it's after God said that's it. Now, could we be going through this again as a nation? Yes, most certainly. We're always going through this. Um, I saw again that small businesses, small businesses, say you have a bakery, which is the ones that keeps coming up. People make cakes and stuff, and you know, gay people come and say, "Hey, make us a gay cake," and they say, "No, not gonna do that." According to my religious, my beliefs, goes against them. Not gonna make that cake. And so you know what they ought to do? Just go to some other place and get your cake. Really? If it's about the cake, then go get your cake somewhere else. They don't. They sue them. It's a it's an opening for them. That's what they want to happen so they can do what they do. That's an attack, folks. That's an attack against the Christians that have a set of values. And the Supreme Court ruled you can't do that. That impedes their freedom of religion. You cannot make them do that, which is good because that is what you call precedent. Precedent. So if, say, someone has another business and someone comes and says, "Make this for me," and you say, "No, it's against my beliefs," there's already precedent established that you cannot make them do that. See, that's why that's important. And the Supreme Court did that because the judges on the Supreme Court value religious freedom. If it was the other way around, you had judges that didn't, they would have said, "No, that's a crime." And that person could be, liable legally for that. Hate crime, whatever they want to say. And folks, that's stuff like that's never going to stop. Our churches are going to always encounter that in our lives. So that's why it's important that you vote. I'm never going to tell you who to vote for, but you need to vote. You need to register. You need to vote. Church people here, you need to go out and vote. You need to. You need to vote what you believe. None of us are immune from that. To think, I don't need to vote. That's kneeling at something else, folks. We're a nation formed by God, and we need to have a part in that, and we need to vote. Who you vote for is your choice. Never going to tell you who to vote for, but I am going to tell you we need to vote. Need to let our voices be heard, because you see, you need to stand up for what you believe and vote that way, and always acknowledge in our own lives, in everything we do, our good Lord. That's what He's saying here. Don't give me halfway things. So this is a hard lesson. It really is. Um, but it's right because we need to understand God does have limits. Man, what did He say? My spirit will not contend with you forever. How long do you expect God just to keep waiting before He says, "All right, that's it"? So if God has been telling you something, laying something on your heart, don't play with that. Get it done. I'm going to have surgery on a Tuesday. Oh, gallbladder. I hear they said, and it's been bad. When I look bad, it look back. It's been bad for a while, you know. But if it don't really bother you, you kind of just ignore it, don't you? You ignore things. If it's not acute, it's not that bad. But sometimes, like gallbladders, people wait until they're having full blown attacks. And I'm not having those, by the way, but it's coming if I keep playing around with it. I've seen people that have attacks like that. Ugh. And mine's coming. They're bad enough when they come. They do. But it's not like that. But they're coming. So I'm getting it done now. All right. And so that'll be Tuesday. So if you remember, just say, hey, help Brother Junior pray for me. But that'll take care of that. If you know something is not right spiritually, emotionally, physically, folks, it's not going to heal itself by ignoring it and saying, let the mountains and the hills fall and cover us. And, no, we need to take care of it and we need to deal with it. So this lesson is a good lesson because to them, God said, that's it. No more chances. We're not in that time right now. We're not. We're still in the time of grace. God is still listening, his hands out, he's reaching out. We're still in that time where you can call on God. You can call on God right now, and God will respond through to our faith. He will. And we can be thankful for that. So, folks, let's not give God the afterthought. Let's give him the first fruits of what he does in our lives, the first fruits, and let God show you he's our loving God. So if you're watching this, you got comments, you got prayer requests, whatever, always send those in and we'll find them, okay? So finish reading that. Okay, that's where our lesson is, just those verses there, but finish reading this Hosea and keep in mind what you're reading is God saying, okay, no more chances. That's what you're reading. But here's the thing. God said that a lot in the Old Testament to many of the through many of the prophets. He would tell them, "That's it, that's it, that's it, that's it, that's it." But you know what? It really wasn't the final it. It was it for them in their time. It wasn't it for them in the future because Jesus was going to come. He hadn't come yet. When we read this, Jesus is not part of their picture yet, but he's coming. So they were going to be redeemed. So even though God says that's it, God is still a redeeming God. You may feel like, yeah, God still got his hand out, folks. Grace, mercy. So we're going to stop right there. Get ready for church. We'll be back here at 11. Catch us next time. God bless.